we first opened, I remember we were trying to sell wines from distributors, and all the distributors were coming here and be like, this is gonna fail, like, we don't have the market for this, Armenians don't drink wine. People who were importing wines were telling us that we are not gonna be able to sell their wine.
Well, I mean, most great companies started with a no anyway, so that's great.
This is Mariam. She's defying those odds. In downtown Yerevan, on Saryan Street, you'll find In Vino. You might say this is just another wine bar, but in reality, it is the first wine bar ever attempted in Yerevan.
There's three of us, so three co-founders, Vahe Balulyan, Alexander Korean, and myself, and I was only 18 at the time. So the main idea came from our Vahe, who traveled around the world everywhere. So he realized there's no place in Yerevan to just go have a glass of wine, proper temperature, proper glass. So he was the one who came up to us and was like, are you ready to sacrifice your personal life for the greater good of a project? And so that's how In Vino started.
That's an interesting question to ask somebody who wants to just, take a risk. And
so we were just sitting there one day in our restaurant, and he said this, and I was like, I need a day to think it over. And I thought, like, what am I doing with my life? I'm studying linguistics, psychology. Okay, cool. Why not? Why not dabble in wine? Especially because it was a part of our family, People used to gather in our houses. Yeah. And I remember, when the grandparents were gathering, always wine. Wine was always on the table. Of course, it was vodka too, but...
Well, if that's the case in your family, there was wine at the table, that there were no places in Yerevan to go have a glass of wine. Is it a cultural barrier?
Yeah.
Or just because the USSR part of this just precluded all that?
Well, definitely USSR contributed to our consumption of vodka. But also I think Armenians really like to gather at home. And so if you gather at home and you have that culture of even making your own wine, so you would just like make some wine on the side, a few liters, and have it served at different events. So I feel like people did not really go out to drink too much, and they were at home. And at home we had those, old Soviet like glasses, or like nothing professional like we have today. We have the Armenian glass, for example. Who would have thought that a grape variety, an Armenian grape variety that is not really known around the world, would have its own glass at some point? So this one is also used for the Pinot Noir wine glass, for Pinot Noir wine.
Right.
So I feel like we all understand that somehow Pinot Noir is similar to Armenian Noir in terms of its structure, but Armenian has a bit more spiciness. So you can also sometimes experiment with a Syrah glass, but this one is the one we chose for Armenian.
The wine world has been paying attention. Armenia's wine trade is changing. Alongside hospitality, it is moving with extraordinary momentum.
Now that we've developed along the way technology, which has been an amazing pace to get to where you are today from when you got here. I mean, really, seriously, how many more wines have you seen? When did they stop saying you're not going to make it? Well, they're still not saying, they're still saying it.
I think they're just not saying anything anymore.
Yeah, right? They come to just get wine, right?
Yeah, they get wine, and they are actually importing more wine. More and more wine is being imported into Armenia, and I don't understand who they're bringing it for. We have a tiny market, but we do have a lot of tourism. So local wines, I understand that people are still producing wines. I mean, when we first opened, I always say this, we only had 10 drinkable Armenian wines.
That's more than I knew.
Well, we did a lot of research, so at least 10 drinkable. Now we have like 600, and at least by the end of each week, I'm getting new brands.
Wow.
So it's very, very concentrated right now. Our market is becoming more and more saturated.
Wine is evolving in Armenia. It's more available and celebrated. It has become a way of life.
So a lot of our guests here at In Vino have started producing their own wines.
Wow.
Because, it's a lifestyle, and it's like, oh, hey, try my wine. And in terms of quality, we are very competitive in terms of quality. We have good quality wines. I can't say drinkable anymore. I have to say they're quality wines now.
That's a huge swing from undrinkable to quality
We
wines.
still have the rest. So whatever you see presented here at In Vino, we have tasted, blind tastings. We do very meticulous tastings to make sure all the wines here are wines that we would actually drink ourselves. So some things don't make the cut.
That's really inspirational. I have to tell you a story about my dad in 1969 when he bought the wine shop that I learned all this in. He was revolutionary in 1969 and 70 to do what you're saying you do. No one tasted the wines on the shelf in America, not that long ago, right? 60 years ago. Because if you were buying a Jack Daniels or a liquor, the same salesman was selling the wine and he'd say, hey, I got a Mondavi cab, here it is, how much is it? My dad said, no, I'm tasting it before I put it on the shelf. That's a critical piece of credibility that you bring to the table.
And we try to choose things that are different, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like we have a lot of wines made from the Armenian grape variety. So it's our responsibility to kind of tell people why they are different. How is this Armenian different from this one, different from this one? And then when you have like 50 or, you know, even more, it's your responsibility. I feel responsible for showing people what Armenian wines are.
And your staff.
Our staff,
You
of
train your
course.
staff?
Our staff are trained. They go to various trainings. They go to wineries. They see how the wine is made. They see the grapes. They see everything. And then when all of that is complete, when they come here, they already know the whole process. So it's very important for them to know the whole process, because then it gives you more, you know, you can talk about it more. And wine is really all about that connection that people have with each wine. It's also about the label and everything, but whatever's inside has to be of good quality.
That's got to be cutting edge stuff, even though it's very old in the world of wine. And I think probably merchants from who knows how far back we go that did this, but for Armenia, for Yerevan particularly, this has to be rather contemporary to do that. And is it appreciated by the
We've been
culture?
doing it since the beginning, and it is appreciated because they know the quality of the wines that they find here. They trust us, you know. It is, you know, if it's presented here, then we kind of give it a stamp of approval. And so I think that's really important to create that relationship with all your guests. Otherwise, you know, how are we going to be different from any other places? A lot of places are doing that now, actually. A lot of places I know, they're like, oh, they have to send me a sample to taste to make sure that it's good wine. But sometimes they don't they taste it and, you know, it's very subjective to them. For me, I try to be very objective about it. There are some qualities. We use a tasting sheet, so point system. The American Wine Society sheet is the simplest 20-point system.
Sure.
We use that, and we have like an average point after which we select the wines. It's different for wines from abroad because they have their brands, well-established brands. In Armenia, it's different. So here you have just like very small producer producing like 5,000 bottles, and they come here with their wine, and you taste it, and sometimes it makes the cut, sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't, we have to let them know why. And you know, it's for their benefit. I know, but it's for their benefit.
Yeah.
Like we have tried so many wines, our palates have become like accustomed to certain flavors. So we have to, I feel like it is also our duty to let them know what is quality wine, the balance and everything.
That might be a different part of not the career, but the life cycle of wine in Armenia versus America. I would never do that when I tasted wine, and did it every Tuesday for 35 years. I always came up with an interesting word to tell. If it was the winemaker or the representative of the winery, I would never tell them the truth about why they didn't cut it.
It's difficult.
But that's interesting because here it's kind of necessary. They'll figure it out in America. There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of work to do. They're tasting wine all the time. But here they're making 5,000 bottles. They show up with one bottle and they say, look, there's too much tannic acid, or it's got an oxidation character, whatever, bottle age problem, whatever the problem is. I think you're right. I think that's a service to them to do that.
Yeah, I think so as
I
well.
think that's great.
It's even more difficult with endemic Armenian varieties because you know what a Chardonnay tastes like, you know what a Cab tastes like.
Yeah.
What does an Arani really taste like? We can't really pinpoint it because it really depends on how the vines are pruned, what terroir it is, the concept of terroir in Armenia. We can use this concept, but we haven't really developed it yet. It's very different, like one plot of land from another, completely different. The way it's pruned and everything. So the idea of a wine being good or exceptional or etc. Because for me, if it's not good, it's not wine. I never say bad wine. I always say it's wine or it's not. It's always about the characteristics of the grape variety. Yeah. So we have our Khatun Kharji, we have our Boskehat, Areni, and all these grape varieties that are just waiting to be explored. And people don't know what they taste like. So when they ask me, oh, what does a Sireni taste like? Or what does a Areni taste like? I have to use a reference. Like, okay, Areni, it's similar in terms of body to a Pinot Noir, but it has spiciness of a Shiraz. Yeah. Whereas, for example, maybe the Sireni is closer to, I don't know, what would you say? You're drinking Sireni. but it's closer to.
Yeah, closer to maybe Bordeaux varietals in its weight, but in its character, closer to some of the Rhone varietals or something like that.
It does have some spices.
But that's an interesting issue because, well, for one, it's very interesting that you have a Pinot Noir glass with Armenian, and Armenian being a grape that seems to be indicative of its terroir, where it's grown.
They found it in the cave. They found it in its.
I think that's really cool that it's starting to evolve like that. But so, is that developed then a culture of wine? Like, look at what's happened here at your store, where there is a Yerevan or Armenian-based culture of wine, where people are gathering, pairing, doing all the things that
discovering,
wine
exploring,
geeks do.
Exactly. And I feel like In Vino has become a kind of hub for people like this, because if you come and sit here during the evening, you might meet a winemaker, you might meet a barrel producer, you might meet someone who is from a wine region of another country. So people really get to connect here. And I feel like that's what a winemaking is all about. It's about sharing your experiences, because I might not have the same experience you have.
The wine business is very tough, and introducing a new brand to the marketplace could be considered a bit crazy.
So you mentioned that there's a lot of brands coming into town, and maybe there's not enough buyers for all this brand. So what does that do to the brands that exist? Is there a dilution? Is there price adjustments?
I've been teaching at the Wine Academy, AVM Wine Academy, for like 6 years, and I teach wine business, right? So all of the students are there with a dream to have their own vineyards, to make their own wine, and that's amazing. But then you go down and you come back down to earth and you realize, wow, I need a lot of money to get vineyards are becoming more and more expensive. I mean, they won't reach the prices of, famous wine regions, of course, but they're pretty expensive. We have a limited amount of land in Armenia, but let me tell you, I think recent statistics say we have around 17,000 hectares, out of which only 30% of the grapes that are planted are used for winemaking. The rest is used for brandy. So we have a limited,
brandy is a huge.
Oh, brandy is of course huge. I mean, it has been being passed on. Whereas wine, in Soviet times, we were deemed a brandy producing country. So wine is kind of always in the backstage. People make wine for themselves. But in general, I try to crush their dreams and say, look, you really need to think this through, because I don't want you to
crush their dreams.
Crush. The pun intended. So, I tell them, okay, you have that romantic idea, but how are you going to make it a reality? And honestly, if someone told me this when we were opening, for example, in Vino, like do market research, see that, maybe I would have not taken the risk. Maybe we would have not taken the risk. But at the same time, there were so many other fermentations happening, with the people moving from abroad, buying vineyards, planting vines, and then the Areni cave. All of that, I feel like we're catalysts, and I feel we are currently still in this era of renaissance of Armenian winemaking, because like I said, every day new brands are emerging, good wines, and small quantities make it seem more of like a, boutique wines.
But you said a good word, the renaissance, and I think in your case it's the beginning of the renaissance, because there's so much to do. But when you're talking about educating the students that come in with these glossy eyes to be involved in the industry,
they don't listen. They don't listen. They're still doing it.
But you didn't, right? Because really, if you had done that research and looked at what's going on, you would have thought, no one drinks wine here. Why would I do this? And so it takes the risk.
I remember those days where we would not have a single guest walk in here. And this table was still there. This is one of the older tables. And I would sit at the edge of this table reading my Wine for Dummies book, because this is the first book I ever read on wine.
Really? Wow.
Wine for Dummies. It was so...
All the books available, you use Wine for Dummies.
It was the easiest and like the first, everything that I learned by basic knowledge was from that book. But in general, so it was about giving them fair warning about what they're getting into. And so we do calculations, like we do winery calculations for people to understand how many years later they could possibly have some type of revenue, turnover. So, we do these things to help people understand fully what it is to enter the wine industry in terms of production. And then right now, what we are really lacking in Armenia, and actually I feel like people are actually addressing these problems, are the sommelier side, presenting wine properly, giving them proper information. So what we do at In Vino, we really try to train our staff to know basic knowledge and then build on that, of course. And now there are some schools opening up, so many schools in Armenia, all by local initiatives. So that's also a part of.
So what do you tell, I mean, there's two things there you just talked about. One of them is going to be, what do you tell your clients that come in, the novice, looking for things and how to grow into it, what to read, how to study. And we know that this information is available to us if we wanted to do it. And everybody's got their sort of resistance to how far they want to understand wine. But it can go on forever. It's a lifetime thing. It sounds like for you, this is what's going to be.
Well, yeah, definitely for me. I mean, every time I learn something new about wine, I'm always surprised, but also it is lifelong learning. Every day something new is emerging, climate is changing, etc. And when they come here and ask me, okay, so how do we make wine? Okay, I say, who do you want to make the wine for? Okay. How much wine do you want to make? Oh, I want to be present on your shelves. Okay, look at all these wines. Yeah. Imagine yourself among this shelf. Then you have to really think about the branding and etc. So I try to point them in the right direction. But honestly, right now, I'm just telling people, look, you should get into marketing wine. You should get into selling wine more because we have the production. Education is so important. Just education, just how to properly taste wine in the proper glass. Yeah. Why use this glass instead of that one, for example? Or in general, why start like with white maybe and then move on to rosé and red?
Most people venture into wine for the romantic life, only to realize that eventually it takes pure passion and drive to pursue that lifestyle.
So why do you get up in the morning? I mean, really, seriously, why?
My alarm clock.
But for you, you get up every morning and you say, I'm tasked to educate, I'm tasked to what? To sell more, all these little pieces. Why? That's really the question.
Honestly, I feel like where I am now, Armenia, is like dough, or I should say clay, because my grandmother was a sculptor and she knows how to shape clay. So it's like a piece of clay that we are all forming. And, me being here and helping educate people, local people, about how to enjoy wine, about wine in general, and people who are from abroad, our guests, and trying to explain the different grape varieties, methods of production, etc. I feel like I am having my little piece of input into forming of this sculpture.
That's great.
And I really feel like just by being here, being in this country, you can really change a lot. We have so much history that nobody talks about. I don't even know some of our history. I haven't even been to many places that people have been. A lot of tourists go to these monasteries.
Yeah, right.
Living here, I don't have time because I'm always on Saryan. So I feel like that is the best thing I can do is, as you said, educate people about wine in general, especially about local wine. Also share my knowledge, because I tend to accumulate knowledge from various people. I get to meet interesting people, share experiences, and all of that, just sharing all of that, I think it's very important. Like I said, in the wine industry, it's one of the things.
You may have tasting rooms at all those monasteries one day.
Oh.
Tourists come in, there's a tasting bar there.
They did used to make wine there, They
That's
have the vessels
it's
there.
It's certainly
so
part of the culture.
But we have a long way to go. I keep saying, In Vino's been open for like 12 years, since 2012. But we still have a long way to go. And when people are like, well, you got it, you don't have to work and you don't have to really do anything, In Vino is its own brand, it's doing its own thing. I'm like, no.
That's an OMG.
Exactly. That's when everything starts to go downhill, where you feel like, okay, that's enough. That's it. It's not enough, it's never enough. We have much to learn. And I am excited to do that every day, share my knowledge, meet new people in the wine industry, and also just the wine as a beverage itself. It's such a cultural beverage, and it's integrated into our culture as well.
You have that romantic view of wine, which is this connection to the soil, the connection to the soul, really. As I think as deep as the roots go in a vine is kind of how far deep it connects to the human soul. But that's the romantic part of this. We have a very practical part of this business, which is, we probably should make a buck, or a dram or two, right?
A dram or two?
Put it in good context. So, but it's fascinating to hear your story, and luck isn't even the right word. It's courage is the more important word to say. Good courage.
Courage.
In the next
resilience.
Next level.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers.